Eyre, Chapter 36, Part 1. The daylight came. I rose at dawn. I busied myself for an hour or two with arranging my things in my chamber, drawers and wardrobe in the order wherein I should wish to leave them during a brief absence. Meantime, I heard St. John quit his room. He stopped at my door. I feared he would knock. No, but a slip of paper was passed under the door. I took it up. It bore these words: "You left me too suddenly last night. Had you stayed but a little longer, you would have laid your hand on the Christian's cross and the angel's crown. I shall expect your clear decision when I return this day fortnight. Meantime, watch and pray that you enter not into temptation. The spirit, I trust, is willing, but the flesh I see is weak. I shall pray for you hourly. Yours, St. John." My spirit, I answered mentally, is willing to do what is right, and my flesh, I hope, is strong enough to accomplish the will of heaven when once that will is distinctly known to me. At any rate, it shall be strong enough to search, inquire, to grope an outlet from this crowd of doubt and find the open day of certainty. It was the 1st of June, yet the morning was overcast and chilly. Rain beat fast on my casement. I heard the front door open and St. John pass out. Looking out through the window, I saw him traverse the garden. He took the way over the misty moors in the direction of Whitcross. There he would meet the coach. In a few more hours I shall succeed you in this track, cousin, I thought. I too have a coach to meet at Whitcross. I too have someone to see and seek after in England before I depart forever. I wanted yet 2 hours of breakfast time. I filled the interval in walking softly about my room and pondering the visitation which had given my plans their present bent. I recalled that inward sensation I experienced, for I could recall it with all its unspeakable strangeness. I recalled the voice I had heard. Again, I questioned whence it came as vainly as before. It seemed in me, not in the external world. I asked, was it a mere nervous impression, a delusion? I could not conceive or believe it was more than an inspiration. The wondrous shock of feeling had come like the earthquake which shook the foundations of Paul and Silas's prison. It had opened the doors of the soul's cell and loosed its bands. It had wakened in out of its sleep, whence it sprang trembling, listening, aghast. Then vibrated thrice a cry on my startled ear and in my quaking heart and through my spirit, which neither feared nor shook, but exulted as if in joy over the success of one effort it had been privileged to make, independent of the cumbrous body. Ere many days, I said, as I terminated my musings, I will know something of him whose voice seemed last night to summon me. Letters have proved of no avail. Personal inquiry shall replace them. At breakfast, I announced to Diana and Mary that I was going to journey and should be absent at least 4 days. Alone, Jane? They asked. Yes, it was to see or hear news of a friend about whom I had for some time been uneasy. They might have said, as I have no doubt they thought, that they had believed me to be without any friends save them, for indeed I had often said so, but with the true unnatural delicacy they abstained from comment, except that Diana asked me if I was sure I was well enough to travel. I looked very pale, she observed. I replied that nothing ailed me save anxiety of mind, which I hoped soon to alleviate. It was easy to make my further arrangements, for I was troubled with no inquiries, no surmises. Having once explained to them that I could not now be illicit about my plans, they kindly and wisely acquiesced in the silence with which I pursued them. According to me, the privilege of free action I should, under similar circumstances, have accorded them. I left Moor House at 3:00 p.m., and soon after 4 I stood at the foot of the signpost of Whitcross, waiting the arrival of the coach which was to take me to the distant Thornfield. Amidst the silence of those solitary roads and desert hills, I heard it approach from a great distance. It was the same vehicle whence a year ago I had alighted one summer evening on this very spot. How desolate and hopeless and objectless. It stopped as I beckoned. I entered, not now obliged to part with my whole fortune as the price of its accommodation. Once more on the road to Thornfield, I felt like the messenger pigeon flying home. It was a journey of 36 hours. I had set out from Whitcross on Tuesday afternoon, and early on the succeeding Thursday morning, the coach stopped to water the horses at the wayside inn, situated in the midst of scenery whose green hedges and large fields and low pastoral hills, how mild of feature and verdant of hue compared with the stern North Midland moors of Morton, met my eye like the lineaments of a once familiar face. Yes, I knew the character of the landscape. I was sure we were near my bourne. How far is Thornfield Hall from here? I asked, at the Ulster. Just 2 miles, ma'am, across the fields. My journey is closed, I thought to myself. I got out of the coach and gave a box I had to the Ulster's charge to be kept till I called for it, paid my fare, satisfied the coachman, and was going. The brightening day gleamed on the sign of the inn, and I read the gilt letters, "The Rochester Arms." My heart leapt up. I was already on my master's very lands. It fell again. The thought struck it. Your master himself may be beyond the British Channel for aught you know. And then, if he is at Thornfield Hall, towards which you hasten, who besides him is there? His lunatic wife? You have nothing to do with him. You dare not speak to him or seek his presence. You have lost your labor. You had better go no further, urged the monitor. Ask information of the people at the inn. They can give you all you seek. They can solve your doubts at once. Go up to that man and inquire if Mr. Rochester be at home. The suggestion was sensible, and yet I could not force myself to act on it. I so dreaded a reply that would crush me with despair. To prolong doubt was to prolong a hope. I might yet once more see the hall under the ray of the star. There was the stile before me, the very fields through which I had hurried, blind, deaf, distracted, with a revengeful fury tracking and scourging me on the morning I fled from Thornfield. Ere I well knew what course I had resolved to take, I was in the midst of them. How fast I walked! How I ran sometimes! How I looked forward to catch the first view of the well-known woods! With that feeling I welcomed single trees I knew and familiar glimpses of meadow and hill between them. At last the woods rose, the rookery clustered dark, a loud cawing broke the morning stillness. Strange delight inspired me as I hastened. Another field crossed, a lane threaded, and there were the courtyard walls, the back offices, the house itself, the rookery still hid. My first view of it shall be in front, I determined, where its bold battlement will strike the eye nobly at once, and where I can single out my master's very window. Perhaps he will be standing at it. He rises early. Perhaps he is now walking in the orchard or on the pavement in front. Could I but see him, but a moment, surely in that case I should not be so mad as to run to him. I cannot tell. I am certain, and if I did, what then? God bless him, what then? Who would be hurt by once more tasting the life his glance can give me? I rave. Perhaps at this moment he is watching the sun rise over the Pyrenees, or on the tideless sea of the south. I had coasted along the lower wall of the orchard, turned its angle. There was a great gate just there, opening into the meadow between two stone pillars crowned by stone balls. From behind one pillar I could peep round quietly at the full front of the mansion. I advanced my head with precaution, desirous to ascertain if any bedroom window blinds were drawn up. Battlements, windows, long front, all from this sheltered station were at my command. The crows sailing overhead perhaps watched me while I took this survey. I wonder what they thought. They must have considered I was very careful and timid at first, and then gradually I grew very bold and reckless. A peep, and then a long stare, and then a departure from my niche, and a straying out into the meadow, and a sudden full stop in front of the great mansion, and a protracted hearty gaze towards it. What affectation of diffidence was this at first? They might have demanded, this stupid regardlessness now. Here an illustration, reader. A lover finds his mistress asleep on a mossy bank. He wishes to catch a glimpse of her fair face without waking her. He steals softly over the grass, careful to make no sound. He pauses, fancying she has stirred. He withdraws, not for the world would have seen him. All is still. He again advances. He bends over her. A light veil rests on her features. He lifts it, bends lower. Now his eyes anticipate the vision of beauty, warm and blooming and lovely in rest. How hurried was their first glance, but how they fix, how he starts, how he suddenly and vehemently clasps in both arms the form he dared not a moment since touch with his finger. How he calls aloud a name and drops his burden and gazes on it wildly. He thus grasps and cries and gazes because he no longer fears to waken by any sound he can utter, by any movement he can make. He thought his love slept sweetly. He finds she is stone dead. I looked with timorous joy towards a stately house. I saw a blackened ruin. No one to cower behind a gatepost indeed, to peep up at chamber lattices, fearing life was astir behind them. No need to listen for doors opening, to fancy steps on the pavement on the gravel walk. The lawn, the grounds were trodden and waste. The portal yawned void. The front was, as I had once seen in a dream, but a shell-like wall, very high and very fragile-looking, perforated with paneless windows. No roof, no battlements, no chimney, all had crashed in. There was the silence of death about it, the solitude of a lonesome wild. No wonder that letters addressed to people here never received an answer, as well dispatch epistle to a vault in a church aisle. The grim blackness of the stones told by what fate the hall had fallen, by conflagration, but how kindled? What story belonged to this disaster? What loss behind mortar and marble and woodwork had fallen upon it? Had life been wrecked as well as property? If so, whose? Dreadful question. There was no one here to answer it, not even dumb sign, mute token. And wandering round the shattered walls and through the devastated interior, I gathered evidence that the calamity was not of late occurrence. Winter snows, I thought, had drifted through that void arch, winter rains beaten in at those hollow casements, for amidst the drenched piles of rubbish, spring had cherished vegetation. Grass and weed grew here and there between the stones and fallen rafters, and oh, where, meantime, was the helpless owner of the rack? In what land? Under what auspices? My eye involuntarily wandered to the gray church tower near the gates, and I asked, is he with Damer de Rochester, sharing the shelter of the narrow marble house? Some answer must be had to these questions. I could find it nowhere but at the inn, and thither ere long I returned. The host himself brought my breakfast into the parlor. I requested him to shut the door and sit down. I had some questions to ask. But when he complied, I scarcely knew how to begin. Such horror had I of the possible answers, and yet the spectacle of desolation I had just left prepared me in a measure for a tale of misery. The host was a respectable-looking, middle-aged man.